While an energy healer was in a session, the room was invaded by a strange light. The energy became dense, almost menacing. Her hands, accustomed to healing, began to vibrate uncontrollably. It wasn't a ritual, it was contact. And the being that materialized revealed the biggest secret NASA is trying to hide about 3 Atlas. The alien showed that 3 Atlas is not an asteroid. It's a transmission. He is emitting a frequency that the global elite fear more than anything. They are lying about what is coming and why he is here. You are about to discover the classified truth about the 3I. Why do authorities lie? And what does that have to do with the strange changes you may already be experiencing? The question is, what is 3 Atlas, and why does its arrival cause control systems to panic? Before we dive deeper, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Grab yourself a warm drink, maybe a cup of tea, or just some water, and sit back as we begin this journey together. Elena was 54 years old and had been working with energy healing in her own practice for 15 years, offering Reiki Level 3, acupuncture, and vibrational therapies. The kind of work that took her years to publicly accept because she knew how it would be received. Alternative, pseudoscience, placebo. Labels she had heard countless times from family, friends, and college classmates from her biology course, which she had abandoned in her 3rd year when she realized that materialistic science would never explain what she had felt in her hands since childhood. It wasn't that she was afraid of judgment. She'd moved past that a decade ago. But frustration persisted, not for herself, but for others. She saw daily what was possible. Patients with chronic pain, whom conventional medicine had given up on improving after sessions. Emotional blockages dissolving when she balanced meridians. Profound connections with something greater happening when she simply created space for energy to flow. But most people would never try because they didn't believe. And Elena had learned not to preach. She let results speak for themselves. Those who were ready came. That Thursday afternoon, the office was quiet as always. Walls and earthy tones, sandalwood incense, soft native flute music playing bass. And Elena was seeing Julian, a 2-year-old man who had been coming for 6 months, initially skeptical, but his wife had insisted back pain that 3 orthopedists couldn't resolve. And after the first session with Elena, the pain had decreased for the first time in years. Now he was a regular client. He still didn't fully understand how it worked, but the results were undeniable. He lay on the stretcher, eyes closed, breathing deeply, and Elena, her hands suspended a few centimeters above his body, felt the flow of energy as she always did. Warmth in her palms, a characteristic tingling, a connection established working on the lumbar region where the main blockage resided. Nothing unusual, a familiar routine. But then, it changed. The energy in the room became dense, not oppressively, but visibly so. The air seemed to vibrate, and Elena paused, her hands still suspended, feeling it wasn't Julian's energy, nor hers. It was a third presence, and before she could fully process it, golden light began to appear in the center of the room. Not a reflection from a window or lamp, but its own luminescence. A small point gradually expanding, and Julian opened his eyes, sat up on the stretcher. "Elena, are you seeing this?" She nodded calmly. Years of energy work had prepared her not to panic in the face of unusual phenomena. She had seen strange things in deep sessions, entities passing by, energy condensing into forms. But this was different, more intense, more deliberate, and light expanded until it formed a humanoid outline, not solid, but not completely ethereal. A figure approximately 1 meter and 80 centimeters tall, silvery blue, radiant. And the moment the form gained enough definition for Elena to see clearly, she recognized, not logically, but viscerally. "I've seen you before," she said aloud without thinking. "In dreams, for months. You've been appearing in my dreams." And it was true. For the past 4 months, she had repeatedly dreamt of being exactly like that. She didn't remember specific conversations upon waking, but the feeling persisted, a familiar presence, an important forgotten message, because it was definitely being conscious, not a random phenomenon, inclined her head in recognition. And a voice came, not audible but telepathic, resonating simultaneously in the minds of Elena and Julian. "Elena, We have prepared your energy field through dreams over the last 12 weeks. We have planted a frequency that would allow this contact. And now, the moment has arrived. I need to communicate something that humanity needs to know. And you, an energy worker for 15 years, will recognize the truth of what I will say. Julian, his breath quickening but not fleeing, fascinated. Is this real? Are we both seeing this? And Elena, maintaining the professional tone she would develop over the years. We are seeing it, Julian. And apparently it's not the first time I've seen this being. She turned her attention to the entity. Why now? Why appear physically if it was already in my dreams? Sir replied, because dreams plant seeds, but present urgency requires direct communication. Something has arrived in your solar system that terrestrial authorities detected and immediately classified. An object they called 3 Atlas. They said it was an interstellar comet. But it is not a comet, and it is not natural. And its effects have already begun. You feel it. Julian feels it. Millions feel it. And confusion will grow exponentially in the coming weeks if the truth is not understood. Elena felt a keen interest. 3I Atlas. I saw something about it in Science News last month. A brief mention, then silence, and it was confirmed. They kept quiet because they discovered the true origin and decided to hide it. But hiding it doesn't prevent effects. It only creates dangerous misinformation when symptoms appear without context. Julian asked, what symptoms? And Elena, before she could answer, said, I've felt changes in the last few months. My intuition has spiked. Things that used to take sessions to notice I now see instantly. My dreams have become incredibly vivid. Synchronicities are happening daily. Patients are even reporting them thinking, I'm doing something different. But I haven't changed my technique. She looked at her. Does this have anything to do with this 3 Atlas being without facial expression? But Elena felt energetic confirmation directly related. But explaining what it is, where it came from, why it's here, and more importantly, why they hide it, requires you to show it, not just listen. Prepare yourself. I will consciously take you to see with your own eyes. Don't just trust my words. See for yourself, then decide what to do with the information. Julian, hesitant, asked, take it where? And Elena replied, not physically, the body remains, but consciousness will temporarily expand to a frequency where I can show it without the filters of third-dimensional density. Safe, reversible, but intense. Elena, as an experienced practitioner, will recognize an experience similar to the astral projection you have already experienced, but guided. Ready? Elena's heart raced, but not from fear, from anticipation. Years of practicing deep meditation, expanding consciousness, occasionally experiencing out-of-body experiences, this was expanded familiar territory, and part of her, part tired of decades working with energy no one saw, frustrated by abilities she demonstrated but few believed in, wanted undeniable proof, something concrete. And this, a being of light appearing during a session with a witness, was the beginning. I'm ready, Julian. You stay here, holding space. It won't be long. And Julian nodded, still processing but trusting. Elena lay down on the second cot in the office, took 3 deep breaths, centering herself as she did before shamanic journeys, and approached, not physically touching, but enveloping his energy field around her. And the sensation was immediate, her body relaxing deeply, her consciousness beginning to expand, the room dissolving. And the last thing she heard before crossing over was the telepathic voice of the being. I will show you the origin of 3 Atlas, what it really is, who sent it, why NASA is hiding it, and what this means for the awakening that has already begun within you. Elena was no longer in the office. Her consciousness had expanded outside her body at a speed she had never experienced. Even with years of practice in astral projection, not chaotic, but accelerated, deliberate, guided by the being she now perceived, not as an external form, but as a presence around her, she passed through the ceiling, through clouds, through the Earth's atmosphere until she was suspended in space, not physically, because her body breathed calmly on the stretcher kilometers below, but consciously present, seeing the blue Earth spinning silently. She felt no cold or shortness of breath because she had no body there, only pure perception. and being a clear telepathic voice, even without physical proximity, said, "First, you will see what your official science sees, then what they hide." And Elena's vision accelerated again, traversing space towards a specific point beyond the lunar orbit, and arriving there, she saw an object that she vaguely recognized from an image that had passed quickly in scientific news weeks before. A comet, they said, an irregular nucleus surrounded by a diffused tail shining faintly under distant sunlight. Designated 3 Atlas, catalogued as such because it was the third interstellar object detected traversing the human solar system. The first was Oumuamua in 2017. The second was Comet Borisov in 2019. Both passed and departed. But this one, Elena's focus, involuntarily approached the object. This one did not depart. It entered a stable orbit around the Sun, a behavior that no interstellar comet should have, and NASA noticed it immediately. Elena's vision drew closer, and as it approached, the outer layer of the comet began to dissolve, not literally, but perceptually, as if it were removing the filter that hid its true nature. And what Elena saw beneath was not rock and irregular ice, but a precise, geometric structure, almost spherical, but with facets, a metallic surface, or something that looked like metal, but reflected light in an impossible way, fractal patterns deeply engraved. And at the center, a constant pulsation of blue-golden light, a cosmic heartbeat. Elena, even in an expanded state of consciousness, felt shock. This isn't a comet. It's constructed, manufactured, and confirmed. Correct. 3 Atlas is a device, not a natural object, created eons ago by a coalition of very ancient civilizations, seeders who planted conscious life in multiple star systems, including Earth, and sent Atlas now, because timing is crucial. Humanity is on an evolutionary threshold, a moment where the species either awakens collectively or collapses under the weight of its own contradictions. Her vision shifted. Elena was no longer looking at Atlas, but inside it, her perception piercing the metallic surface to its pulsating core. She saw not mechanisms in the technological sense, but living crystals, geometric formations vibrating at frequencies that she, having worked with energy for 15 years, instinctively recognized. Is this a frequency transmitter like cosmically amplified quartz crystals? And she answered, precisely. Atlas is not a weapon, not a ship, not a threat. It is a beacon emitting a specific frequency that reaches every planetary body, including Earth, a frequency that activates something at a deep cellular level. Elena asked, activates what? But was deflected. I'll explain the full function later. First, you need to see why they're hiding it. Come here. And Elena's consciousness was pulled again, this time, not through space, but through time, going back weeks. And she was observing from above the NASA facility, a control room full of monitors, scientists working, and on the central screen an image of the newly detected 3I. And Elena heard conversations even without a physical body there. A young, excited scientist exclaimed, "Interstellar object entering the solar system. Anomalous trajectory not following the parabolic orbit of passing objects. It's decelerating," as if he hesitated, as if it were intentionally braking. And a superior older man with gray hair approached. "Continue analysis, don't publish anything yet." And hours later, in the same room, data processed, and the pale young scientist staring at the screen. Internal structure doesn't match comet. Composition irregular density. There are geometric patterns beneath the surface, and it's emitting a long pause. It's emitting electromagnetic pulses at an extremely low frequency, 528 Hz amplified. The superior immediately said, "Classify everything maximum level. Don't leave this room. The official statement will be natural interstellar comet, nothing more." And the young scientist, confused, said, "But this is a monumental discovery. If it's artificial..." And the superior interrupted, "Precisely because it's artificial, it can't be public, global panic, conspiracy theories, and most importantly, if it's emitting a frequency directed towards Earth, we need to understand the effects before the population knows the source." The scene dissolved, and Elena returned to space alongside the pulsating Atlas and said, "They saw what it is, classified it immediately, fabricated a narrative of a natural comet and monitor its effects secretly because they realize they can't turn it off. They can't destroy it without catastrophic consequences. So, they control information while Atlas continues to fulfill its function. Elena absorbed that. And what is the function of this 528 Hz frequency? I've heard about it. A healing frequency, DNA repair, they say. But what does it actually do? And she answered, it doesn't repair DNA as if it were damaged. It activates dormant codes within it. Information that has always been there, but inactive, latent, waiting for the right signal to awaken. And Atlas provides this cosmically amplified signal, reaching all human beings simultaneously, rich and poor, believers and skeptics. It doesn't discriminate. The frequency passes through walls, bunkers, ocean depths. It reaches everyone. Elena felt a shiver, even without a physical body. So what I felt, in recent months, heightened intuition, vivid dream, synchronicities, is an effect of this frequency. And she confirmed, initial effect. First activation symptoms. Sensitive as you feel first and more intensely, because you already operate at higher frequencies through spiritual work. But gradually a critical mass will feel it. Changes cannot be reversed. Now Atlas is in stable orbit. Emission is constant, and in the coming weeks and months it will accelerate. Elena's consciousness began to feel a pull back to her body. The expansion session ending, and she was told before her complete return, what I've shown you so far is what and who is hiding. But I haven't yet explained why they are hiding it. Beyond information control, there's a deeper, more disturbing reason for the global elite, and it's directly related to what Atlas activates. When you return to your body, I'll have Julian confirm what you saw to make sure it wasn't your imagination. And then I'll explain exactly what's being activated at the cellular level, why this terrifies those who control current systems, and what you need to do now that you know. And Elena was quickly pulled back, through space, through the atmosphere, through the ceiling, and found her body lying on the stretcher. She took a deep breath, her eyes opening, and Julian was beside her. Elena, you were completely still for 15 minutes, your breathing almost imperceptible. I stayed here, observing as you asked. The being of light remained the whole time. And he hesitated. I saw things too, not as you saw them, but flashes, images in my mind. An object in space that wasn't a comet. Facilities with scientists hiding data. Was it real? Elena sat down slowly, her body still adjusting to reintegration, and looked at the ethereal being that remained in the center of the room, and said with absolute certainty, it was real, Julian, all real, and what they showed us is only the beginning. Elena sat on the examination table, her body still subtly vibrating from the experience, and Julian pulled up a chair, both gazing at the ethereal being that remained luminous in the center of the office. There was silence for a moment as they processed the impossibility of what had just happened until Elena asked directly, you said that Atlas activates something at a cellular level, dormant codes in the DNA. What exactly does that mean? What is being activated? The being moved fluidly, approaching without walking, more like gliding through space, and responded telepathically, but in a way that both could hear clearly. Humanity carries in its genetics something it forgot it possessed. It wasn't removed. It wasn't damaged, only dormant, deactivated through millennia, living in dense frequencies of fear, survival, separation, and, what you call, spiritual abilities. The energy healing you practice, Elena, intuition, connection with non-local information, conscious manifestation are not special gifts that some develop. They are natural functions that all humans possess, but only a small percentage access currently. Elena heard that and felt profound validation. It was exactly what she had realized in 15 years of practice. Each person she attended had a latent capacity to feel energy, to heal, to connect, but most blocked it through limiting beliefs. I'm not sensitive. I don't have the gift. This isn't real. And these blockages became self-fulfilling prophecies. So you're saying that every human being is born with these active capacities, but society shuts them down? Sir nodded energetically. Not society specifically, but a collective frequency of density. When a child is born, In the first few years, it is still connected, sees beyond the physical, feels energy, communicates telepathically with its mother before developing language, but gradually upon absorbing the dominant frequency of separation, materialism, and skepticism. These capacities fall asleep not out of malice, but through adaptation. The child learns, what I see is not real. What I feel doesn't matter. Only matter exists. And DNA responds. Codes associated with expanded perception enter a latent mode, not deleted, just inactive. Julian, listening fascinated, asked, like a computer program that isn't running but is still on the hard drive? And confirmed, that's an appropriate analogy. Atlas is a command that restarts execution. The 528 Hz frequency isn't arbitrary. It's a specific resonance frequency that interacts with the helical structure of DNA. It doesn't change the genetic sequence, but it does change expression. It activates regions that human science calls junk DNA because it doesn't understand their function. 98% of human DNA is cataloged as non-coding, but it's not junk. It's a library of capabilities awaiting activation. Elena sensed the implications of this expanding. So when Atlas emits this frequency continuously, the DNA of all humanity begins to express codes that were dormant. And she confirmed, the process has already begun. The first symptoms appear in sensitives like you, but subsequent waves will progressively affect the population, and initial symptoms are a dramatic increase in intuition. Frequent lucid dreams full of symbolic information, synchronicities, multiplying because you begin to perceive connections that have always existed, but you ignored. A feeling of awakening as if you were sleeping and waking up to a broader reality. A sudden search for purpose and meaning where before conformity was enough. Julian interrupted. I felt that, especially in the last few weeks. I started having strange, vivid dreams, waking up, remembering details and ridiculous coincidences. I think of someone, and that person calls minutes later, multiple times a day. I thought I was going crazy. And Elena added, patients do report. Something has changed. I don't know what, but I feel different, more awake. I attributed it to the energy work from the sessions, but it was too consistent a pattern all at the same time. Sir continued. Because it's not individual, it's collective. Atlas doesn't choose who to activate. The frequency affects everyone, but the speed of activation varies according to prior openness. Those who already work consciously with energy like Elena accelerate. Those who live in extreme denial of anything beyond the material resist, but resistance only delays. It doesn't prevent. Eventually, critical mass will reach a point where changes are undeniable globally. Elena wondered what had been on the back of her mind since she saw NASA classifying data. And why does this need to be hidden? Activating latent capabilities sounds positive, evolutionary. Why is the elite so afraid that they fabricate a false narrative? And being for the first time emanated something close to gravity, an emotional weight that Elena felt energetically because the elite that controls global power structures, economic, political, religious, doesn't profit from awakened humans. It profits from sleeping humans. And she elaborated, the current system works through dependency. You depend on pharmaceutical corporations for health, on governments for security, on religions for spiritual connection, on experts to validate your experience, on the media to tell you what is real. And while you depend, they control you. But when you activate innate abilities, you cease to depend. You discover that you can heal with your own hands. Elena demonstrates this daily. You discover that you can access information directly through intuition without intermediaries. You discover that you can manifest reality through conscious focus without needing external systems. You discover that connection with the Creator Source is direct. It doesn't require a temple or a priest, Julian whispered. And when millions discover this simultaneously, and then added, systems collapse, not necessarily violently, but inevitably, when the population no longer needs structures that exist to control through artificially created dependency, structures lose function, lose power, and the elite that benefits from these systems fears this more than any external threat. That's why they hide Atlas's origin. That's why they fabricate a narrative of a natural comet, Because if the population knew that the activation was intentional, that it was sent by benevolent civilizations, it would accelerate the process. Collective expectation would amplify the effects. Elena processed that years of frustration trying to show people that they had power within them, the ability to heal, to create, and most refused to believe because if I had that power, someone would have taught me. It would be in books, on TV, a deep conditioning of disempowerment. And now Atlas was undoing that conditioning at the cellular level, not through persuasion, but through direct activation. So it doesn't matter if a person believes or not, the code activates anyway. Sir, confirmed. Belief accelerates or slows down, but does not prevent. It is a biological process, responding to vibrational stimuli like a plant growing towards the sun, not by choice but by phototropism. Human DNA responds to activation frequency because it was designed that way by seeders who originally created the species. They planted a complete library of capabilities knowing that humanity would grow to a point where it would be ready to access them, and Atlas is the key that unlocks the library. Julian asked practically. And what happens when a mass of people activate these capabilities simultaneously? Chaos, or something organized? And Sir replied, it depends on how information is disseminated. If the population remains ignorant about the source of change, confusion increases, fear grows, authorities exploit fear to increase control. Symptoms of collective mental illness, they need medication, regulation, but if the truth is shared, context is given. You are not going crazy. You are awakening. Symptoms are activation, not pathology. Then the process flows with less resistance, less collective trauma. Elena understood the implication. That's why you appeared to me. You want me to share this to prepare people for what's coming. And she nodded. You and thousands like you globally, light workers, therapists, healers, spiritual teachers, all receiving information simultaneously through multiple channels, because the moment is critical. The next 12 to 18 weeks, activation will accelerate dramatically. Symptoms will intensify, and the population will need guides who understand what is happening, who can calm fears, explain processes, teach how to work with energies that are awakening. Elena felt a weight of responsibility but also excitement. Finally, evidence that could not be ignored. And what else do I need to know? You said you would show everything. Origin, function, reason for hiding it. What else is there? Her voice shone brighter momentarily. I need to show you specifically which capabilities are being activated, not vaguely, but in detail, so that you can recognize them in yourself and teach others to recognize them. And then crucially, I will reveal what the elite plans to do when they can no longer hide the effects, the countermeasures they will try to implement to put the population back to sleep, and how to resist these attempts. Ready? Being moved to the center of the room again, light emanating from him, subtly intensifying, and said, telepathically with crystal clarity. First, specific abilities are being activated at this moment, in you, Elena, in Julian, in millions, globally. 5 main ones that you will recognize immediately if you pay attention. And it began, first amplified energy healing. Elena, have you noticed that recent sessions produce faster and deeper results than 6 months ago? Elena nodded immediately. Yes, drastically. Patients with blockages that would normally take months to resolve in weeks. Chronic pain that needed 10 sessions improves in 3. I thought I was just refining technique, but the magnitude of the change was inexplicable, and she confirmed, it's not technique. It's the activation of an innate capacity to channel and direct vital energy with exponentially greater efficiency. Your hands have always been able to heal. Now they can heal faster because the healing code in your DNA is fully expressing itself. But not just professional healers. Anyone will start to notice. Touch someone in pain, and the pain diminishes. Hug a crying child, and the child calms down instantly. Not just for emotional comfort, but for real energy transmission. Most won't consciously recognize it at first, but the effects will be undeniable, and some naturally curious will start to experiment intentionally, discovering that they have the capacity. Second ability, he continued. Intuition no longer as a vague guess, but as direct knowledge. Elena, how many times in the last few weeks have you known something about a patient before they even spoke? Not deducing from symptoms, but knowing directly. And, Elena, her eyes widening in recognition constantly. Last week, a new patient came in. Before she even sat down, I already knew that the main problem was childhood trauma, not the physical pain she came to treat. I didn't analyze it. I just knew. And when I gently mentioned it, she broke down. That was exactly it. Sir agreed. Access to non-local information, what some call the Akashic field, the universal record of information, has always been available. But the human mind in a dormant state doesn't tune into the correct frequency. Current activation allows for natural tuning, and not just about people, but about events. You will begin to know that someone will call before the phone rings, that an opportunity will arrive before it manifests, that change comes before external signs appear, not as mystical clairvoyance, but as an expanded perception of probabilities and connections. Julian interrupted, his voice hesitant, but honest. I experienced that yesterday driving to work. I knew that specific traffic would be congested on a street that normally isn't. There was no logical reason, but I intuitively swerved. I later found out there had been an accident exactly there at the time I would have been passing. Is that what you're describing? And he confirmed exactly intuition, that saves, that guides, that protects. Not luck, but a keen perception of the information field around you. And the more you trust and act on it, the stronger it becomes. Third ability, she continued, initial telepathy. Not complete conversations mentally yet, but picking up thoughts and emotions of people close to me. Elena, did you notice that you know what the patient is going to say before they say it? Not specific content, but feeling intention behind the words. Elena nodded. Yes, and with my daughter too, she lives in another state. But last week I woke up at 3:00 the morning knowing she was sad. I called. She was crying because of a breakup. How did I know? Sir explained. Strong emotional connections create energetic threads between people. These have always existed, but they weren't perceptible. Activating them increases sensitivity to these threads. You can feel what your loved one feels, even from a distance initially, with intense emotions like sadness, fear, and extreme joy, but gradually, subtleties as well. And in physical proximity, you'll pick up on superficial thoughts, not invasively, but naturally, like hearing music playing in the next room. You don't choose to hear it, but you do. Julian, processing. This could be disturbing. I don't want to invade anyone's privacy, and was gently replied, valid ethical concern, but it comes with the ability to control it. You will learn to shut down perception when appropriate, like closing your eyes to avoid seeing. Skill develops with practice, and most people will have natural ethics. They won't abuse them. Just as you have the physical capacity to hurt someone, but you don't because you are ethical. Fourth capacity, he continued, accelerated conscious manifestation, thought directly influencing physical reality. It has always been true that thoughts create reality, but at such a slow pace that the connection wasn't obvious. Activation accelerates drastically. You think about something with focus and emotion, and it manifests in days or weeks, not months or years. Elena, have you noticed synchronicities increasing? Elena laughed, acknowledging ridiculously. I think I need something. It appears literally yesterday I thought I needed a specific book on acupuncture meridians that's been out of print for years. 3 hours later, a patient brings it. I found it at a thrift store. I thought you'd like it. Exactly the book. It happens constantly now, and she confirmed accelerated manifestation. The more aware you become of the process, the more you can intentionally direct it, not for greed, but for alignment, creating a life that resonates with your soul's purpose. Fifth and final main capacity, it should be emphasized. Direct connection with the creative source, God, the universe, however you prefer to call it. Not through an intermediary or ritual or sacred place, but directly at any moment feeling divine presence as a tangible reality, not as an abstract belief. Elena, have you had recent moments where you felt oneness with everything? Elena, tears welling up without warning. Yes. During meditation last week, it wasn't visualization or imagination. It was a visceral experience of dissolving separation. I was everything, and everything was me. It lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it was more real than physical reality. Afterwards, I thought I had reached a deep, meditative state after years of practice. But are you saying it was activation? And she confirmed both. Your practice prepared receptivity. Activation provided the final impulse, and experiences like this will multiply not only in meditation, but spontaneously walking in nature, looking at stars in ordinary moments, the veil between human and divine, thinning a reminder that separation has always been an illusion. Julian, silent, until then, processing the magnitude of what he was hearing, asked, "And does the elite know that all this is being activated? Is that why they're hiding it?" And he replied, "They know. They monitor effects through data that the population doesn't realize they're providing. Online searches for spiritual symptoms have skyrocketed. The search for meaning and synchronicities has multiplied. Online communities of people reporting awakenings are growing exponentially. They track everything and plan countermeasures." Elena felt the tension growing. What countermeasures? And the emanation becoming more serious. First, discrediting labeling symptoms as psychological disorders. Increased collective anxiety requires medication, media campaigns, pathologizing spiritual experiences, making people doubt their own perceptions. You're not awakening. You're having a breakdown. Second, massive distraction. Events manufactured to occupy collective attention. Fear, amplified through crises, wars, pandemics, collapsing economies. The more fear and survival dominate consciousness, the less space for awakening to flourish. Julian, uneasy, said, "That sounds like massive-scale population control." And he didn't deny it. That's exactly what it is. But here's a crucial truth you need to understand. Countermeasures delay but don't prevent because activation is biological. Responding to constant vibrational stimuli from Atlas, it's not a belief that can be manipulated. It's a physical process in the DNA. You can make the population doubt what they feel, but you can't make the feeling stop. And when a critical mass of people recognizes that what they feel is real, valid, and globally shared, collective resistance to official narratives grows, and the elite loses control of the narrative. Elena asked, "And what do we do? How do we resist countermeasures?" And Sir replied, "By sharing truth, validating each other's experiences, creating supportive communities where people can speak openly about change without fear of ridicule or pathologization, and most importantly, pause trusting what they feel more than what authorities say they should feel." But there is something more. They need to know something more urgent. Being moved closer to Elena and Julian, his energy intensifying to the point where the entire room vibrated subtly, the walls seeming to pulse in sync with the emanating light, and said with a telepathic urgency that they both felt physically in their chests. "What I've shared so far is context, but there's a specific timeline you need to understand. Atlas doesn't emit frequency indefinitely. There's an activation window, and we're in the middle of it now." Elena sat up straighter, her attention fully focused. "Window? How long?" And she replied, "Atlas entered a stable orbit 8 Earth weeks ago. Emissions began immediately, but at low intensity, gradually increasing so as not to drastically disrupt biological systems. Peak emissions will occur in 10 weeks from now, at which point the frequency reaches maximum amplitude, and that will be a critical moment for humanity collectively." Julian asked why critical, and Sir explained, "Because at the peak of emission, cellular activation reaches a threshold where conscious choice becomes necessary. Until now, changes are subtle, gradual. A person can ignore them, rationalize them, imagination, coincidence, stress. But at the peak, symptoms will be undeniable. Abilities will manifest spontaneously, even in completely skeptical people, and humanity will face a collective choice that will define the future of the species." Elena felt the gravity of it all. What choice? And being light pulsing more slowly, as if carefully choosing words except to awaken and evolve consciously or resist out of fear and temporarily regress. There is no possible neutrality at the peak. The frequency will be so intense that everyone will have direct experiences of activated abilities. A moment where a skeptical person raises their hand and visible energy flows, healing someone. A moment where thought manifests instantly. A moment where the veil between dimensions thins so much that the presence of beings like me becomes perceptible, to the mass population. Julian, processing the magnitude, asked, "What if humanity collectively chooses to resist? What happens?" And answered honestly, "Unnecessary suffering, massive cognitive dissonance, people feeling and seeing capabilities but denying them because authorities say it's impossible, resulting in collective psychological crises, overburdened mental institutions. Mass medication, attempting to suppress symptoms that are not pathological but evolutionary. And on a planetary level, a missed opportunity activation will gradually reverse after peak if not sustained by collective conscious acceptance." Elena, alarmed, asked, "Is Atlas leaving? Will the frequency stop?" And was informed, "Atlas will complete its cycle and depart, its mission complete, regardless of the outcome. But if humanity does not consciously accept changes at the peak, codes activated in the DNA will gradually return to latency over the years. The next generation will be born asleep again, and the cycle of suffering through separation, fear, and external control will continue for centuries until the next activation window, which could take millennia depending on planetary development," Julian whispered. "So we have 10 weeks to prepare humanity for the greatest evolutionary shift in its history." And she nodded. "Not only prepare but plant seeds of acceptance, which is why I appear to you now, Elena, and to thousands of other light workers globally, each in their sphere of influence. Your patients, Elena, already trust you. When they begin to feel the changes intensifying, they will come seeking explanation, and if you can contextualize, this is activation, not pathology. Accept it and flow with the process. You will save these people from unnecessary suffering." Elena felt a weight of responsibility but also clarity of purpose. "So my role is to be a bridge to validate experiences, to teach how to work with awakened capacities." And she confirmed exactly, but not just to teach techniques, more importantly to give permission. Most people have been conditioned their whole lives not to trust their own perception. This isn't real. You're imagining it. And when you, a respected figure who has worked with energy for 15 years, say, "Yes, it's real. I see it too," you're not crazy. You're awakening. You give permission for the person to accept their own experience without pathologizing it. And the attention turned specifically to Julian. "And you, Julian, you came to the session today not by chance. Your soul knew you would find crucial information. You are a natural skeptic, a businessman, a materialist by training, and you witnessed everything that Elena witnessed, making you a valuable witness when you speak with people in your circle, businessmen, executives, people who would normally dismiss spiritual information as nonsense. Your validation carries weight. I saw it. I was there. I don't easily believe it, but it was real. You will open minds that would remain closed." Julian, absorbing the unexpected role assigned to him, nodded slowly. "I never thought I would be a messenger of cosmic awakening. But after what I saw today, I can't deny it. It would be dishonest." And emanated energetic gratitude. "Honesty is all we ask. Don't evangelize. Just share experiences when appropriate. Seeds will be planted." Elena asked practically. 10 weeks to peak. What specifically should I expect? How will symptoms evolve? And describe the timeline. Next 3 weeks, symptoms we described will gradually intensify. Intuition will become so precise that it will be impossible to ignore. Synchronicities so frequent that the pattern will be obvious. Dreams so vivid that memory of them will persist as waking life memory. Weeks 4 to 7. Abilities will begin to manifest spontaneously, even without intention. Healing happening accidentally when you touch someone. Telepathy picking up thoughts without trying. Small objects moving responsively to strong intention. Julian interrupted. "Wait, moving objects telekinesis." And confirmed at beginner levels, not dramatic levitation, but subtle influence over matter through focus of consciousness, especially light objects or liquids, water responding to intention, candles lighting without touch when desire is intense, manifestations that current science cannot explain but will become common, and in weeks 8 to 10, approaching the peak, the veil between dimensions will thin drastically. People will begin to see beings of other frequencies, luminous presences, guides the deceased, not as hallucinations, but as perceptions of overlapping realities that have always existed but were not accessible. Elena, her mind working quickly, asked, "And the elite? Will their countermeasures also intensify in this timeline?" And he confirmed grimly, "Yes, the coming weeks will see an increase in fear narratives, manufactured or amplified crisis, efforts to keep the population at a low survival frequency, because they know that fear temporarily blocks activation. A person in panic doesn't expand consciousness, they contract it, but their strategy has a fundamental flaw. The Atlas frequency is constant. It doesn't fluctuate with external events. So even if they manage to scare the population temporarily, biological activation continues, and eventually symptoms overcome the capacity for denial." Julian asked. "And at the peak specifically, what happens?" "And being intensely pulsing energy. 48 hours of maximum frequency. A moment when all humans on Earth will simultaneously have an undeniable experience of activated capacity. It could be spontaneous healing of illness. It could be clear telepathy with a loved one. It could be vision of a higher dimension. It could be instantaneous manifestation of thought. It varies by individual, but universally happens. And at that moment, the choice becomes conscious. Do I accept it as real and explore it, or do I deny and suppress it?" Elena felt a shiver. What if critical mass accepts it, and was for the first time emanating something like hope or joy? A smooth transition to a new era of planetary consciousness. Capacities that have been activated remain active and develop naturally. Dependency-based control systems collapse without violence because no one needs them anymore. Healing becomes accessible through anyone's hands. Information, accessible through intuition. Manifestation through focused intention. Spirituality without intermediaries. Humanity becomes an autonomous collaborative species directly connected to the source. And he paused. But what if critical mass resists? A heavy silence followed. A gradual return to dormancy, a lost opportunity, and centuries of unnecessary suffering. Not as punishment, but as a natural consequence of collective choice. Free will is sacred even when it chooses against its own evolution. Elena, her determination growing, asked, "So, each person I help accept and integrate change increases the likelihood of humanity collectively choosing to awaken." And she confirmed, "Each individual consciousness contributes to the collective field. Your influence multiplies, ready to begin." Elena rose from the stretcher, her body now fully reintegrated, her energy stabilized, and looked directly at the ethereal being. "I'm ready, but I need to know how to begin. I can't just approach patients and say, 'An alien told me about a cosmic transmitter activating DNA.' I'd be committed, and being emanating understanding. You don't start with a complete explanation. You start by validating experiences they're already having. Listen, when a patient mentions a strange dream, a strong intuition, an impressive synchronicity, instead of deflecting or minimizing, validate. 'Yes, I've been hearing that a lot lately. You're not unique. Something is changing collectively. Open up space for conversation,' Julian added. And if they ask what's causing the changes, I can't mention Atlas without sounding crazy." And Sir replied, "Call it planetary frequency shift, collective awakening, natural activation of consciousness, terms that resonate spiritually but don't require acceptance of aliens or cosmic devices. Full information comes later when a person has already experienced changes personally and seeks deeper context. Then you can elaborate gradually." Elena nodded. It made sense. A gradual approach she already used in energy work, not forcing concepts, allowing experience to guide understanding. And technically, how do I help people integrate awakened abilities, specific techniques? Sophia offered 3 fundamental practices you can teach immediately. First, conscious breathing connected with intention. When you feel energy in your hands, breathe deeply and intend to direct it. This trains conscious control of healing. Second, synchronicity journaling, recording coincidences and patterns daily. This makes a person aware of accelerated manifestation. Third, grounding meditation, because activating abilities can become unbalanced if a person is not connected to their physical body. It teaches grounding while expanding perception. Elena mentally noted down practices simple enough to teach in sessions and asked, "And fear, inevitably, people will be afraid when abilities manifest, especially those who were raised believing it's impossible or dangerous." And she gently replied, "Fear is natural validation. I understand that this is scary. Something new is always scary. But observe when you accidentally healed someone. Who did it harm them? No, it helped. The power that awakens in you is not destructive. It's creative. It's loving. It's a natural extension of who you truly are." And remind them they are not gaining something alien. They are remembering something forgotten. And the heartbeat began to slow down, its intensity gradually decreasing. "My presence here is complete. I have delivered the necessary information. The appropriate witnesses have received it. Now, it is up to you, Elena and Julian, each in your own sphere, to plant seeds of acceptance, validate experiences, teach integration, and trust that you are playing a crucial part in the planetary awakening, even when it seems small or insignificant." Julian, realizing it was time to say goodbye, asked, "Are you leaving? How will we contact you again if we need to?" And she replied, "No external contact is necessary. The activation that began within you today accelerates intuition. When you need guidance, meditate, ask internally. Answers will come through your own expanded wisdom. Trust yourselves. This is the complete point of activation, reconnecting with your inner source of knowledge, not depending on external sources." But she paused. "If it's a genuine emergency, call telepathically. I will hear you." And the light that formed the ethereal body began to dissolve, not disappearing abruptly, but gradually becoming transparent, and final telepathic words echoed, "Seeds are planted. Observe growth in the coming weeks. And remember, you are not alone. Thousands of light workers globally are receiving the same information. Now, the collective field of awakening strengthens daily. Be courageous, be honest, be beacons." And with that, the presence disappeared completely, the energy of the room returning to normal, only Elena and Julian remaining, looking at each other in silence, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. Julian spoke first, his voice. "Did that really happen? Did we really see and hear all that?" And Elena, still feeling a residual vibration in her palms, "It happened. And Julian, you're a witness. I can't doubt it when another person confirmed an identical experience." And Julian nodded. "I won't deny what I saw, but Elena, my life is going to change. I can't keep pretending that reality is only what I see with my physical eyes after this." Elena smiled warily, but hopefully. "Welcome to awakening. It's uncomfortable at first, but it expands everything." And they talked for another 20 minutes, sharing impressions, aligning understandings. And when Julian finally left the office, the back pain that had originally brought him there completely forgotten, Elena was left alone, sat in a chair, and allowed herself to process. 15 years working with energy, facing skepticism, being called a charlatan by family members, losing friendships because Elena got weird with these alternative things, and now, cosmic validation. She hadn't imagined it. Her abilities were real. The changes happening were real, and she had a specific mission to help others navigate the awakening that she herself was still navigating. And in the following weeks, exactly as predicted, changes accelerated first in Elena herself. Her intuition, which was already strong, became as precise as a clock. She knew who would call before the phone rang. She knew which patients would cancel before they did. She knew when a storm was coming, hours before the weather forecast predicted it. And it was no longer occasional, it was constant, an uninterrupted flow of information that she learned to filter, or she would be overwhelmed. And new abilities manifested themselves during a session with a fibromyalgia patient. Elena placed her hands on the patient's shoulders and felt not only energy but also cellular structure, internally sensing inflammation and blockages at a microscopic level. She intended specific, not general healing, and the patient gasped. "I feel intense heat, as if something is reorganizing itself inside." After the session, pain that had been constant for years was instantly reduced by 80%, a result that would normally take months, and patients began to report their own changes, not only received healing, but awakening abilities within them. A 62-year-old woman casually mentioned, "I dreamed of my deceased mother so real. She told me things I didn't know. I checked later. They were true." What does it mean? And Elena, following guidance from her, validated, "It means that the veil between dimensions is thinning. You are accessing expanded perception. It's not imagination. It's real. Explore without fear." And within a circle of close friends, Elena began to share carefully, not forcing, but offering. Something is happening planetarily. Frequencies are changing. People are awakening. Do you feel it? And most admitted, yes. Strange dreams, strong intuitions, a feeling that something big is coming, and conversations that she previously avoided for fear of ridicule now happened naturally because the collective field was changing. Openness was growing, and Julian fulfilled his role at a corporate dinner. A colleague mentioned insomnia and disturbing, vivid dreams. And Julian, a man who 6 weeks ago would have changed the subject, said, "Me too. And I discovered that it's not a disorder. It's awakening, expanding consciousness. There's information available if you're interested." The colleague, surprised that such a pragmatic executive would speak like that, asked for details, and the conversation opened up. A month after meeting the being, Elena was in the doctor's office when she felt, not saw, but sensed, a familiar presence, watching and knew telepathically without words that the being was monitoring, progress, approving, and a message came clearly to her mind. Keep going. Seeds are germinating. The peak is approaching. You will be ready. 2 months after her encounter with the ethereal being, Elena was in her office on a quiet afternoon with no patient scheduled. The window opened, letting in a breeze, and she looked at her own hands, thinking about how everything had changed. Not only had her abilities expanded, but her complete perception of reality. The world was no longer solid and predictable. It was fluid, responsive, alive in ways she hadn't noticed before. And patients came differently now, not just seeking healing from pain, but confirmation of changes they felt. Am I going crazy, or do I really know things before they happen? And Elena, faithful to her mission, validated, taught, calmed, and saw transformations happening. People who arrived frightened, left empowered, not because she gave them power, but because she validated power they already had. And the remaining weeks until the aforementioned peak were ticking by. 3 weeks now, and Elena felt the intensification, not only within herself, but collectively. Strange news began to appear. Unexplained increase in reports of spiritual experiences. Hospitals report spontaneous cures without medical explanation. Global synchronicities intrigue scientists. The media tried to rationalize, but the tone changed. No longer total disbelief, now cautious curiosity. One night, while meditating alone, Elena felt a familiar presence return briefly. Not materialized, but clearly telepathic. "Pico is coming. Are you ready? Remember, be a beacon, not a savior. Each person awakens themselves. You only illuminate the path." Then the presence dissipated, but the certainty remained. And now, as I tell you this story, I want you to understand something that took Elena years to fully comprehend what is really happening. You're not reading about something far away. You are reading about you. Because if this story reached you, it wasn't an accident. It wasn't a random algorithm or a casual click. It was resonance. Something in you recognized it, not the information specifically about 3 Atlas. But the deeper truth behind it is, you are changing. You felt it, haven't you? Intuitions that are too often correct to be mere luck. Dreams that seem like messages are not brain entertainment. Thoughts about someone seconds before that person shows up or calls. A growing sense that there's more going on than meets the eye. What did you attribute it to? Imagination? Coincidence? Stress? Or a part of you, a quiet but persistent part, whispered, "What if it's real?" Permission is everything. Elena worked for 15 years demonstrating her abilities. But only when the alien validated it did she allow herself to believe completely. not because it needed external authority, but because a lifetime of conditioning tells us that's not real. And you really do carry conditioning. So listen to this, as if being ethereal were speaking directly to you. What you feel is real, not pathology, not imagination, not an inflated ego. It's a memory waking up. You are not gaining new powers. It's remembering who you always were before you forgot. Before density, before conditioning, before fear. Whether Atlas is a cosmic transmitter, or a natural planetary shift, or an evolutionary cycle, the name doesn't matter. What matters is that change is undeniable. You can feel it. Millions feel it. And the more it validates itself, the more it strengthens collectively. You are not alone. Elena thought she had been alone for years until I realized it wasn't there. Thousands, working silently. Healers, therapists, teachers, seekers, each one thinking they were unique. But everyone felt the same impulse. I need to help people awaken. You could be one of them. You don't need to be a professional therapist. You just need to validate experiences when someone shares them. I feel that way too. 3 words that free a person from thinking they are going crazy. That is the mission. Don't save. Don't convince. Just validate. Some of you are feeling a call. It's not intellectual curiosity. It is an urgency of the soul. Something has awakened that will not go back to sleep. An awakening that has begun but needs guidance to fully blossom.